Hello everybody, and welcome back to the iCar Tech Center and the next edition of the iCar Repairer's Realm. In this mini-series, I guess you would call it, that we've had here, we've talked a little bit about electronically controlled suspension systems, electronic assist, and steering systems. And now we're going to get into steering angle sensors a little bit. And you start to think about steering angle sensors and the role they play in modern vehicles. You know, we've got really everything from all the different ADAS systems that you touched on, or that we've touched on in different events. You know, understanding that a lot of vehicle makers require steering alignments and then steering angle sensor calibrations before you do the calibration for the ADAS system. You know, we'll start with I think with you, Jeff. I know we've talked a little bit before we started here, and you had a great intro into understanding where we came from and how we got to where we're at now.
And so with any of the technology that we deal with on vehicles, I think it's important for the technicians out there to understand the architecture of the system. And so I step clear back to before we had anti-lock brakes, we learned to pump the brake pedal in our panic stop situations to control the vehicle, maintain steering control as best we could. With the advent of anti-lock brakes, of course, that helped immensely in maintaining control of that vehicle in a panic braking situation, a hard braking situation, or some sort of a loss of traction, poor friction interface of the tires to the road surface. Ultimately, the evolution of that, the next thing we saw come along, of course, was traction control. So kind of the opposite of anti-lock braking, acceleration, keep from spinning the tires until you're burning them off. From there, the next thing we saw come onto the scene was essentially the stability control systems. And with the stability control systems, the technology on board they needed to better understand the intention of the driver. And that's really the key of where the steering angle sensor came in, because as I'm steering the vehicle, I'm saying, hey, I want to go this way. I've got the steering wheel turned a certain amount. I've got my foot on the accelerator. We're going a certain speed. And now it can compute out based on some input from yaw rate sensors and lateral accelerometers and wheel speed sensors and some other data. But again, the steering wheel sensor is primary for saying, hey, he wants to go that way or he wants to go that way based on which way the steering wheels turn. And that gave us a tremendous amount of capability to move to where we are today, that coupled with the other topics we've talked about, and particularly electric power steering. You know, where now, hey, okay, you know, that ties in with that. And you know, the sky's the limit from here as we start to look at our ADAS and the potential future of autonomous driving.
Yeah. On the iCar website or the RTS website, is there anything that we have on there that might help people understand, you know, steering angle sensors and some of the things they need to look for?
Well, you know, one of the biggest things is the steering angle sensor is kind of everywhere. It really, it shows up in a lot of the different pieces of information. If we want to pull up the website here, we have our ADAS calibration and scanning article hotspot. And on here, you're going to find things, you know, one of the things that we talk about when we talk about a calibration is, okay, we got to look at that camera or sensor that we took off or did something with, and typically there's a calibration associated with that. But there's a lot of other additional calibrations, and if we start looking at each OEM kind of has their own set of things that we kind of see a pattern to of things we have to look at. And on this particular one, if we look at Kia, they're calling out that steering position calibration. They're calling out some of those things in conjunction with calibrations when you're on those different vehicle systems. So it's not just, oh, we did something with the steering angle sensor, we have to calibrate it. It's a lot of times if we're doing a wheel alignment or you know, if you have adaptive headlighting, that really relies on that steering angle sensor to know where the headlights need to be pointed. And so that's where you start looking at these individual systems, and it just, steering angle sensor is kind of the heart of the whole process. You know, it affects the wheel alignment, as we talked about in the previous one. And, you know, so we have a lot of information on the RTS website and articles just kind of helping people understand that. And then also on the calibration search, this particular one is on a Subaru, and they're calling out some of these the steering angle sensor, if it's removed or adjusted. If we did anything with the steering wheel, we have to calibrate the steering angle sensor. If suspension parts are removed, adjusted, or replaced. So basically, we're touching it. We have to, they want to know where that steering angle sensor's at, calibrated and it's accurate. So you start looking at all these different procedures, and you're going to start seeing that steering angle sensor just crop up time and time again.
And I think some of that translates, whenever you start thinking about that, to structural repairs that we do to the vehicles that potentially affect those alignment angles.
Yep.
That again drives the importance of understanding, I want to say, the cause and effect of the damage that's been inflicted, the repairs that we've done, and how that's potentially influenced that outcome for that steering angle sensor.
Yeah. So I've got a question from my buddy Dirk here, but before I go there, for those of you that are watching this live, if you would enter any questions you have into the chat box, we will answer those questions for you. If you're watching this on demand, some form of playback, if you have any questions at all, submit them to repairersrealm@i-car.com, and we will get your questions answered. So for my buddy Dirk,
Oh,
right?
wow.
You're some sort of ADAS guy, right? You have some knowledge there. Why is the the steering angle sensor so important with some of these ADAS systems and how they react to the steering wheel?
Okay, that's a question.
It's a big question, I know, but you can handle it.
Let me circle back to another function before I go in the ADAS route. I
Just
hope
always
you
have
allow
to go
me.
a different direction.
I know. It's my natural nature. That's what. So okay, I want to circle back to the electromechanical steering rack what we talked last time. So one big function of this electric mechanical steering rack is actually that a long-term algorithm can compensate for misalignment. So let's say I'm driving down my parking lot and I hit something and my steering wheel is misaligned. So my suspension, my system I have a misalignment. When I have a misalignment, mechanically my steering wheel will go to the right, for example. So then when I would drive fast and I want to drive straight, I have always this force, this misalignment, this little pressure on the steering wheel, and I hold the steering wheel to the right, or to the center, and this is uncomfortable, then I have this misalignment in. So that would be how I drove back in the days, and I would, as a driver, feel there is something wrong. The downside of those modern steering racks is now that they are now compensating this automatically. So the electric motor pushes now the steering wheel in center position. And that would be an offset, let's say, from 1 degree or ½ degree from the steering angle sensor.
Right.
Then the ABS system is now tying up to the whole thing. And I close my speech pretty soon. So the ABS system, the speed sensor on the tire. So when we drive straight, all speed sensors will report, of course, the same speed. So that's how we find out when we're driving straight, when speed sensors reporting the same signal. So, and then this control unit can then compensate or say, okay, there is not steering angle sensor 0 has all the same speed signals. No, steering angle sensor 1 degree to the right has all the same speeds, and that's how we're compensating for this misalignment. The cool part is the driver don't have this resistance in the steering wheel and this weird feeling. The bad part is the driver even don't recognize he has a problem, and possibly tire wear and other things coming into consideration, and the costs go in the maintenance a little up in that regards. What is maybe a downside, but hey, he has not a problem. He drives still comfortable. So now I come back to the steering angle sensor.
I throw those big softballs over to you so you show how smart you are. And I had planned to go there at the end of the show, but you just keep doing it your way. Keep going.
Okay, but now, look, listen up. So why all those alignment companies, what we all know, say in their system, before, when you make your mechanical alignment, you have to calibrate the steering angle sensor. The reason is exactly that scenario what I just described. Then you make your mechanical wheel alignment, and the system still thinks 1 degree to the right is center. Then you go on it, you make your mechanical alignment, you make everything correct, everything is perfect. You go on a test drive, your steering wheel will stay 1 degree to the left. Then he still has this algorithm saved and didn't learn, oh, this is not center anymore. Then that takes approximately 10, 20 miles to learn this new thing. So you go on a test drive and your steering wheel stands on this position and you think, I just made my wheel alignment. I did everything correct. Why is my steering wheel in this position? The reason is the electric motor holds it in this position in regards to this learned misalignment. So this is the reason why it's so important to calibrate this steering angle sensor. So that's a little bit back from the last episode. So you ask me now how that is influenced ADAS. So
yeah, I mean, you think
you
about
want
these
to
different
shut me
systems.
off, isn't it?
Usually. But you think about all these different ADAS systems and vehicle systems. You know, we talked a little bit in the discussion around the suspensions, and we talked about things like stability control and things like that. And you think about the steering angle sensor, how it plays into that, right? If the system is reading that it's, you know, if it's
Lane
not reading the
assist.
steering wheel right,
Yeah.
you know, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
And the same thing with lane keeping and
Lane keeping.
you know, all of those things.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the different autonomous driving classes, what we call always 0 to 5. When we are on 2, then you hold really, the vehicle holds automatically the center or the middle lane and adjusts to the lane. This is one thing. I'm thinking also, I saw this vehicle has a park assist, the Mustang over there. What is a park assist? That parks automatically the vehicle. So it operates the steering wheel completely automatic. And who needs for that the information of the steering angle sensor, where we are from the steering wheel, where we want to go, what angle we're driving. There is so much math and so much calculation and so much inputs from the steering angle sensor involved. As you said, Scott, it's the heart of the system. So really, really important calibration. We all went the same route a little bit and said calibration is so important. It is so important, and can have a lot of influence and bad influence when it's not proper calibrated, especially for lane keeping assist, that it's not keeping the lane in the middle and it's moving somewhere where it's not supposed to be when the sensor is
So
not
you
calibrated.
brought up the park assist feature, and we were out in the expedition that we have here, and we were working with that parallel and perpendicular park function, and we were surprised at how first accurate it was, and also it was almost a little scary as I was sitting in the passenger seat and kind of watching what it was doing, and the driver was watching very closely what it was doing as it paralleled parked next to his vehicle. It got really, really close at one point to that vehicle, but it didn't hit it, it missed it, and it put us perfectly in that spot. And you know, there's a whole bunch of different, I'll say, sensor technology coming together, but a lot of that close quarters positioning is then relying on those ultrasonic sensors, the parking sensors there in the bumper, and the 4 of them that are looking sideways. And we did a little research into those, and the ones on the front of that vehicle have a much deeper range. So as they're going by the parking spaces, they can judge, how deep is that parking space and will this vehicle fit? That's pretty neat.
You know, so now I have to pull off my Europe card again. I'm sorry, I don't want to do this, but that's always, you know, it's in my mind, I compare US and Europe a little bit and what's going on. Here in the US, we are blessed with these huge spaces and huge parking lots. So parallel parking is not, besides you live really in a big city, urban, not such a big deal like in Europe, but in Europe you park only parallel everywhere. And a lot of people made jokes about it, like some comments, like whatever, I don't want to call them out, but it is a great system. It is more accurate. I can park. It's much faster than I can park. The steering wheel turns so fast, I have no chance to turn that steering wheel in that fast. And it goes in parking lots where I would look at this like, is this parking lot even bigger as my car length? I don't know, and it fits in there and parks in there. This is a great system, great
Yeah,
stuff.
I've talked to people that have driven with you, and I would be more comfortable with autonomous and automatic parking as well. So I get it.
Okay.
So
I got it. Now I'm shutting out.
all right, all right. Well, that was a great discussion around steering angle sensors. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there. But again, if you have any questions, please submit those questions to repairersrealm@i-car.com, and we will get those answered for you. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, guys, for watching.
I just heard Bud talk about your driving, so I can confirm that.
Confirm what? Driving in Germany?
we can talk about that.
Oh, okay. I think we should talk about steering angle sensor. So, guys, what you saw, I don't know if everybody had the chance to saw our full episode of the electrification of the suspension systems. That was our thought behind those 3 episodes we now delivered. We started with electrical shock absorber suspension systems, like we went to magnetic ride. We had at Ford Mustang in the shop and talked a little bit about that system, how it works, and what you have to do from a standpoint of how you exchange those components and what you have to know about it and things like that. And then we went over in our next episode and we're talking about the electromechanical steering rack. And I remember that episode really well. And this is one of my favorite subjects, actually, talk a little how that works. And what benefits as well this system brings to a vehicle and to drivability of a vehicle. I always say this was the first step for really realizing autonomous driving. Then an electromechanical steering rack, what more or less every vehicle is now equipped, is capable of steering by themselves. And all those functions, what you can see on lane assist, lane departure warning, and guiding you through the curves and stuff like that, this is based on an electromechanical steering rack. Yeah, and today we finished it up with the steering angle sensor. And I want to bring Neil in this conversation a little bit. I invited Neil. So Neil is a new employee under the iCar umbrella, and he will be our instructor, actually, for really those new modern, new technologies, what we have to train out there. And I know Neil knows a lot about those systems, and this is in his blood. So Neil, thank you for taking the time and being with me here and talk a little bit about. So what is your output, your thoughts about everything?
Well, after re-seeing the video again, 2 things came to mind, right? The modern automobile became more curious than Dirk Fuchs, right? So the engineers are putting sensors on all these systems to monitor, put all that data in computers, process that information, and resend it into actuators. So the steering angle sensor, in my opinion, has 2 functions. First of all, monitor the driver, and at the end of the day, monitor the vehicle. What direction is the driver commanding the vehicle? But like you mentioned before, is that those systems will be taken over by the modern automobile and these computers by taking the information and doing self-control, autonomous. So when the automobile is driving itself or partially driving itself, it also needs to have that data to process and execute. So there's a duality of functions there, but a pretty cool system. Another thing that I came to mind when I saw the video, steering angle sensor, pretty obvious. It's the direction of steering. But there's another function in the steering angle sensor. What if we are quick the steering wheel, like Mario Andretti, very aggressive, slowly driving and going fast in corners and aggressively in corners, tapping the brakes, slapping the brakes, or driving like grandpa or grandma, just cruising and sliding through these corners, gliding through these corners. That's when a computer can recognize too, what kind of driver do I have behind the steering wheel, and it can tune the suspension, it can tune the engine performance and the reaction, the shifting of automatic transmissions. So everything is correlated and talking to each other just with this simple sensor.
Mhm. So that's, your explanation, now when we think about a collision repair and you think, okay, there was an accident involved, airbag system has to be changed, clock springs have to be changed. From time to time, steering angle sensors are included in those systems. They have to be, and then there is something wrong. And you said, for example, automatic transmission. I don't want to talk about automatic transmissions right now, but a shifting concern and stuff could be related to things like that. What could be triggered
Absolutely.
after an accident when you actually think about that? And then you have a shifting concern, a drivability concern, and you think, okay, we fixed this vehicle properly, everything looks nice, but the driving performance is not that great. So there is really, really a lot to that thing, and I always think the steering angle sensor is one of the heart of our operations now. Back in the days, it was developed for the stability control system. So, okay, we have a G sensor in the car. We're seeing, oh, my vehicle is oversteering, and now this the stability control system, what knows the angle of the steering wheel, will apply the brakes accordingly to catch the vehicle out of this oversteer situation. That was the only goal why we had this sensor. And that was possibly already 20 years ago. And now needed every microsecond for information for that system. So that's the reason why we thought we putting this in this repairer's realm to make this talk about it and raise the importance of that sensor out in the industry. So
Definitely create awareness.
we want to open it up for your questions, and that's the reason why we are here. We want to answer all your questions, what you have to steering angle sensors.
I see we got a question in.
You got a question in. Come on, read.
Well, I see. I cannot see the question, but I see that you have a question. You can.
I can. Okay, I read a question. You answer. What do you think? It's a good.
All right. I'll give it a try.
Okay, listen. Our systems like Ford just made completely different, as we have been told by engineers. They only need done if the throw a code just seems odd. So it's a hard question for me to understand. Could you understand my English, Neil?
Well, so he's asking if there's a difference between Ford technology and other brand technology. Is that am I hearing that correctly?
I read it again. I think so. Our systems like Ford just made completely different, as we have been told by engineers. There's only need done if it throws a code just seems odd.
They only seems to need done when it throws a code. So it's a sensor. Okay, let's think about a temperature sensor on a car, right? Temperature sensor goes from -40 I'm a Celsius guy, but let's say Celsius and Fahrenheit, -40 to 140 plus. Okay, we can measure within that field. We have a big frame of measurement. Okay, if that sensor is measuring 80, but it needs to measure 20, boom, we got a problem. But it's not out of its parameters. It's not 141 or -41. So it's not falling out of its parameters, and it's not setting a fault code. Okay, so definitely these systems can have issues even though they're not setting a fault code. That would be kind of, I think, my answer to that end of that question. Right. The first part of the question, it's just a sensor measuring in degrees. Like you have a compass nowadays on your cell phone that tells you exactly where north is, south, east, and west, and that goes in a circle of 360 degrees, divided in 360 degrees. So this sensor as well, it's plus 90 degrees or 270, quarter turn to the left or quarter turn to the right, and that's how it's telling the driving direction chosen by the driver. Hopefully the car is following if the alignment and everything is in check, or if the car is driving autonomous with the help of the electromechanical power steering. But the functionality for it versus other manufacturers is the same.
Yeah. And Neil, another thing, we talked always about the steering angle sensor in regards to degrees, angles. The sensor is also providing now a second information, what is the steering angle speed. So that means how you made it a little bit in your explanation already, how fast the driver is steering. Then this is that's really the information the steering rack has to need to support how fast the electric motor has to be driven, with how much torque the electric motor has to be driven to support and give this perfect feeling for the driver when he gets the support. So there is a lot of things behind it. I always remember when I did, oh God, how long is it ago? I was in Germany. We had our rack. We made an alignment. It was a car first. It was a Volkswagen Golf, I remember, with an electromechanical steering rack, and I made a wheel alignment. And I made this alignment, and I made everything like was 100% in the specs on the toe, and it's supposed to be. And I thought, oh, let's go on a test drive. And I drove, and my steering wheel was to the left. And by the way, I had to make the wheel alignment, and we put some performance suspension systems in this car. So we pimped the car, went a little bit down, a bit lower. So the drive height went lower, nice suspension systems was in, and we put, I made wheel alignment, and my steering wheel was to the left. And when you change the drive height, you change a little bit the configuration of your toe, and the whole steering angle sensor is getting completely crazy about it. Then the steering 0 point, the mechanical 0 point before will change in regards to lowering the vehicle. So I had no clue about that stuff, and I went on a test drive, and I thought, holy cow, what's going on? My steering wheel is to the left. I went back, put my equipment on, checked everything. Perfect. Oh, so you know what I did? I hanged on the car like a monkey and whipped it up and down. I thought maybe it has to settle, new suspension, engine thing. And I'm like a minute or whatever, I made my changes only for the good feeling. I went back on a test drive, steering wheel still to the left. So then I found out that I have to calibrate steering angle sensor. So that was not a mechanical problem, but my steering rack, and we were talking about it in our last episode a little bit, the steering rack and the steering angle sensor hold the rack on 0. There is the middle line, but the middle line was actually 2 degrees or whatever to the left on the steering wheel. So that was my experience, and since that, I know how important it is. You make your wheel alignment, and after the wheel alignment, you have to calibrate your steering angle sensor. This is so important.
So now I have a question for you, Dirk. Since you mentioned you were in Germany and you were tuning the car, dropping the car, and putting a lowering kit on it, we're here in America. What do Americans love to do with their pickup trucks? All right, so bigger rims, bigger tires, right, and lift kits.
Yes, sir.
But is it just with lowering that you have that issue and challenge? So.
Yeah, absolute. Opposite direction, same consequence. So, absolute.
So that's definitely one to take into consideration. Once you're going to tweak the car and lower it or raise it, then your steering angle sensor needs to be recalibrated and be checked. It's not just statically, but definitely go on a test drive and see that you have consistency in your 0 degree and straightforward. And you can see it on your scanner. You can go into your data pits, you hook up your computer, and you definitely can look at live data from your steering angle sensor and see, hey, is this really responding to the way that I am controlling and demanding the vehicle? I think we got another question in.
Yeah, you read a question, I want to answer it.
I don't can agree. Where's the question? Oh, is
You
this
can't
okay?
read it.
I got a question. Is the
No,
procedure
the
to
guy,
calibrate?
that guy can't read. That's the problem.
I can read. Give me just a second. Is the procedure to calibrate the steering angle sensor basically the same on most vehicles? How long does it typically take? So to my knowledge about the brands that I have been working with, it is all in the same line of calibration. So it's all a static calibration, and how long it takes. I think it takes longer to hook up your scanner and get to the program than the actual calibration. That is minutes, and the calibration is seconds.
So what you have to do to calibrate a steering angle sensor, the sensor needs the three informations. What is my left end stop of my steering rack? What is my right end stop? And what is the center point? And this is what you do why you're calibrating. And all brands, I never saw it differently, as Neil also already mentioned. You steer to the left, computer-based, diagnostic tool-based. The computer tells you steer to the left to the end point. You steer to the left, hold the steering wheel in the end point, you acknowledge it, steer to the right, acknowledge it, go back to the middle, acknowledge it. That's those three measurements what a steering angle sensor on a modern vehicle wants to know. Then the steering rack needs this information to operate. Then when we, for example, driving out of a corner, back in the days, our wheel caster and our suspension geometrics were responsible for putting the steering wheel back to center. Now the steering rack is doing this, and we need to know where we are, where is my endpoint, and where is the middle line where I have to bring the steering wheel back. So there's a lot of information what are needed, but that's a 3-point calibration actually on the steering angle sensor. There is another calibration, what we call more a synchronization. So, for example, you lose your battery, or we unplug the battery. When you unplug the battery, there is a rule what says every electrical component what gets operated by an electric motor, for example, your windows, you have usually your push button, you push your button and your window close automatically. When you unhook your battery and you put your battery back on, you will recognize this click button is not working. You have to hold this button until your window closes. So what you have to do, you have to synchronize it. And what the system wants to do is wants to know, okay, where is my end stop and where is my lower stop? Those two positions. That we are sure in an emergency situation, kid has, for example, the head in the window will pull back. You know, this is really important. And that has to be acknowledged where are those 2 points. And now we're coming to an electrical steering system, what do the same. So you unhook your battery, put battery, the steering rack will flag a control light, will be on yellow. And when the light is yellow, what they want is synchronize it. And you don't need a diagnostic tool to synchronize it, only to acknowledge again, left stop, right stop, middle. And that's when you can do with a speed signal. So you drive out of your shop, drive faster than I think 3 miles per hour, and the system will already look, okay, where is left, where is right, where is center? Okay, we're good to go. This is only to make sure everything works properly and to acknowledge. So every time you will face that when you, for example, unhook the battery. No, but Neil, I thought you had a question. I had an idea.
Well, I had an add-on to your story. So calibrating the steering angle sensor, going completely to the left and then completely to the right to let the computer know its end positions and it finding its center. What is tremendously important when you do that action is at the end, when you hit the end stop, to put your muscle into the steering wheel and flex the torsion bar. I don't think you've touched it in this video, but the steering torque sensor is sitting inside the rack itself, and then it is mounted on a torsion bar. That torsion bar has a flexibility of 5 degrees, and you need to flex that torsion bar 5 degrees to hit its end stop to get the right calibration. A lot of guys in the aftermarket are finding it very hard to walk through the steering angle procedure calibration and say it's not working for me, I'm using an aftermarket scanner. They go to the dealer pulls it off, but just the lack of information that they really need to put force in that steering wheel, twisting that torsion bar, holding it for a brief second, 1 to 3 seconds, depending on car manufacturer, go back to the right side, do the same thing, come back to center, and it will calibrate itself. But just that little muscle in that steering wheel is tremendously important for a good calibration. So we did get another question in, Dirk, here. Do you need to, and a very good question, by the way, I like that question. Dirk is going to answer this because he's the alignment expert, like you just heard from Germany, right? Do you need to perform an alignment when you perform a steering angle sensor reset?
So good question, and I thought about this question when it came in. So the question is why I want to reset, or why I want to reset the steering angle sensor, and why I want to do it. That's the number one question. Is it related to some work on the suspension system? Definitely yes. Is it related that, oh, the sensor failed and I have to change a defect sensor? So I would follow here always the manufacturer procedure. Then there are manufacturers that are requiring it for sure. They say you change the steering angle sensor, you have to make your alignment first. But I know as well, there are some manufacturers there are saying you change the steering angle sensor, so please calibrate the steering angle sensor, and when there is no complaint with the suspension, with the toe, and you make a test drive and everything is okay, it's not necessary. So it's a little bit manufacturer to manufacturer based. What is your experience, Neil?
Well, the steering angle sensor is telling the direction, the intentional direction measured in degrees by a sensor, right? The alignment is the actual direction of the chassis versus the body, okay? Yep. So those two need to be both aligned. So you're aligning or you're recalibrating or you're resetting your steering angle sensor, but your settings, your suspension settings, your rear axle needs to be going straight forward as well. If your rear axle would be a couple of degrees off and your steering angle sensor would still be calibrated to 0, that will be auto-compensating like you explained in the video before, and then your long-term algorithms, I didn't hear that terminology since 5 years ago, long-term algorithms, like what are long-term algorithms? Well, adaptations, okay? If you ever heard of transmission adaptations, long fuel trim, short fuel trim, same line of working. It's a computer that knows how to adapt itself to its current environment and working with those parameters. But definitely, if you have the possibility, I would just double check just to be sure. Steering angle sensor reset, calibration, and make sure that your chassis is aligned for proper operation.
And you know, it depending on what kind of steering system is equipped with this car. You know, is it, now I call it a simple electromechanical steering system, or is it, for example, something that can adjust steering angles like an active steering rack, but also modern vehicles already using more and more. We didn't talk about that whole field here, but when you really have a little more expensive vehicle, a good BMW, for example.
Well, the technology is catching up. The stuff that you're seeing in modern vehicles nowadays, we will see it in the cheaper cars in 10 years. It's just a matter of time. And that's what we've been seeing always in the automobile industry. First, it was on the high-end models, and then 10 years later, it's more affordable to produce it in mass and put it on the lower-end models, and everybody got it. Look at ADAS, look at electronic shock absorbers, and all this stuff. So whatever you can learn from the high-end technology right now is common sense and common technology in 10 years on a regular automobile, $30,000 car.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's see if we're getting more questions in. So right now I don't see anything, but I see somebody is typing. So anybody has more questions, then please type them in. I hope we didn't confuse you guys too much today with everything what we talked about it. But it
No, I
was
think
fun
we did
for
good.
me, and I appreciated, Neil, that you jumped in and made with me this Christmas session. So as we're waiting for more questions, I have a nice sweater on, by the way. Then I live in Colorado. It's a little cold here. And my colleague and friend Neil is in Florida located. So this is our modern world where we are in. So he can sit in a t-shirt. I have to sit in a big sweater, mountain sweater. But holds me warm here.
Well, it's also warm here. You know, you just need to put clothes on to get warm, and here the sun is shining and it gets warm automatically. But anyway, if you don't have your steering angle sensor calibrated right and the system is within its parameters, not setting fault codes, it can still do some very weird stuff with your steering, with your handling, and the safety of your automobile. So back to the steering angle, it will make it can. It can throw you off center and start auto correcting you with the help of the electromechanical power steering. There are some weird non-desirable glitches that could end up in the system, and that could definitely influence your drivability and your comfort behind the steering wheel, and that will make you give a good sweat.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. So still, I think the last time, we asked again, any open questions what we can answer to you guys? Let's see, I see somebody's typing, so maybe it comes something interesting towards our way, Neil.
Yeah.
Get warm. So no
more questions. Unfortunately, we have a lot more material to talk about in the future, that's for sure. I'm really looking forward to that.
So thank you, Neil. Thank you for being my partner in crime. Thank you guys for tuning in on midweek between Christmas and New Year. I wish everybody a happy New Year, good start in 2022. I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and I hope we see you next time at our next Repairers Realm episode. So thank you so much and enjoy the New Year's Eve.
See you in the new year. Have a good one. Bye-bye.